Welcome back, scholars. So today we're going to talk about noun declension endings. Last time we just talked about the background of nouns, how you build them, some of the terms that we use when talking about nouns. Well, today we're going to look at the 5 declensions of nouns and what the endings for those declensions look like. All right, so let's get started with the first declension. We actually included this one on the last video, but we'll go ahead and go over it one more time on here again. So first declension nouns, they're almost all feminine. Nouns like patria, patriae. You can tell our first declension because you have the nominative and genitive singular that are I. Okay, and then they follow the following pattern. I, I, In the plural, so when you have more than one, it goes I, arum, is, as, is. Okay? Especially if you're a newer scholar now, it's a good thing to stop and think about these long marks over some of the vowels. They do actually change how the vowels sound. So, for example, over here in the singular, in nominative, the ending is Down here in the ablative, though, with a long mark, it's So, okay? Sometimes you can't really hear the difference, and it's really hard for English speakers sometimes to tell. But oftentimes, there's times when they actually change the meaning of the word, so you do need to know where those long marks are. Anyway, so that's the first declension. Let's move on to the second. Okay, and the second declension is broken into 2 chunks. One chunk is masculine, the other is neuter. They're considered the same declension though because most of the endings are the same. So let's go ahead and look at the second declension masculine endings. Again, you can tell from our example noun, amicus, amici, that the first 2 are going to be us, e, and it should be a long mark. So, us, e, o, o. Us, e, o, o. In the plural, we have e, orum, is, os, is. Okay? Again, don't forget those long marks. This is e, not I. This is orum, right? Long O. Os with a long mark. So us, e, o, e, orum, is, os, is. For second declension neuter, they're almost the same. Okay, they're in just a couple of places where they're not the same. So you can tell they're going to start off with e, again, should be a long mark. So e, o, again, o again, e, o, o. Now in the plural, they do something a little weird. And we'll talk about this in more depth in just a second, but for the nominative plural, instead of e, like for masculine, it goes short a. So orum, is, is. E, o, orum, is, is. Something I want to draw your attention to really quick, because this is the first neuter noun that we've seen. There's a rule in Latin where whenever you have a neuter noun or adjective describing a neuter noun, whatever you have in the nominative, you also have in the accusative. Okay? You notice how nominative, accusative, nominative, accusative, All right? So again, for neuter nouns, whatever you do in the nominative, you also do in the accusative. Just a way to save yourself some time, especially when you're filling out charts. And it is a rule that you'll see in just a second, carries all throughout all the declensions. Okay? Next, let's move on to the third declension. Third declension is a little weird because, well, unlike first and second, in the third declension, you can have a noun that's masculine or feminine, and you can't tell by looking at it. In other words, the endings for third declension masculine and third declension feminine are exactly the same. You just have to memorize when you learn new vocab words. You have to memorize a couple of things, but you have to know the definition, obviously. But you also have to memorize what gender the noun is. Okay? So let's look at those endings real quick. The first one, we say blank. We say blank not because there's no ending there, but rather because in the nominative singular for a third declension noun, the ending can be almost anything. Okay? There is no pattern. So there's no way to memorize what the nominative singular should look like. So we just say blank, because you just have to memorize it for each individual noun. Like, look at our two example nouns here, rex, regus, and virtus, virtutis. Well, rex and virtus, those endings don't look anything alike. It's because it's blank. It can be anything. All right, let's go ahead and look at those endings. So for the third declension, they go blank, is. Notice that's a short I, so it's blank is. E, long I, M, E. Blank is, E-M, E. Over here in the plural, we have ace, ibus, ace, ibus. Blank is, E-M-E, ace, ibus, ace, ibus. Okay? So that's third declension masculine and feminine. They look exactly the same as far as their endings go. You just have to memorize those vocab words, the vocab term, and the gender of the noun. But there's also another category of third declension neuter. All right? Just like before, they're almost the same, but there's a couple slight differences. Okay? So first off, the third declension, so nominative singular is going to be blank. You just can't predict what it's going to look like. Genitive singular, as you can see right here, still going to be is. Blank is. Dative is still e. But remember what we said before about neuter nouns in the Latin language? That means nominative is blank, accusative also has to be blank. In other words, it's the same as this. All right? And then the ablative, still going to be e. All right? Moving over to the plural. So, nominative plural for a third declension neuter noun is a. Genitive plural, still ibus. And remember, what you do to the nominative, you have to do the accusative with a neuter noun. So it's a in the accusative. And then ibus again. Okay? So for third declension neuter, it goes blank, is, e blank e, a, ibus, a, ibus. All right? Now, here's the part where I have to stop us and say, if you are a 3L, that's as far as you need to go for now. Those are all the declensions that you learned last year. If you are instead a 4L, well, you know all the declensions, so we're going to review the rest of them, that is fourth and fifth declension right now. So, all right, 4Ls, 3Ls are gone. Let's do this. So, for the fourth declension, you have a really similar thing. For masculine and feminine, the endings are the same, and you cannot tell by looking at the word. You just have to memorize what gender each individual vocab word is. Um, Fourth declension, well, this one's a little weird, I'll just say. But let's go ahead and write those out now. So automatically, you always get the first two for free. You know that the nominative singular is us. Genitive singular is us with that long mark. See where those long marks can come in handy? There's no other way you're going to be able to know just by looking that these are not the same case, right? That long mark tells you the difference between them. Okay, so for the fourth declension, masculine, feminine, the endings go us, oos, ooey, ooh. And when you're doing your chant to memorize them, make sure you are trying to make the long letters sound different than the short ones. So us, oos, ooey, ooh. Okay? Nominative plural, oos, again. Genitive plural, and we come back to our friend ibus, us, ibus. Okay. Let's move to fourth declension neuter. So this one is almost a blank word square, I have to admit, because most of the endings it really feels like almost all of them are the same letter, which can get a little confusing. But again, you know the first two. So they start off ooh, oos, and then I hate to do this to you, but the next three, ooh, ooh, and you guessed it, ooh. My sincere apologies. Now, for the plural, for the neuter of fourth declension, again, at this point, you kind of start seeing how, a lot of these sets of endings have stuff in common. It's neuter, so you may have noticed in the third declension as well as the second for neuter, there's always a short A here, and same thing with fourth. So we go ooh, oos, ooh, ooah, ibus, ooah, ibus. Okay. Finally, let's move on to the fifth and last declension. This one also is a little weird, but mercifully, there just aren't that many fifth declension nouns in the Latin language. So, while the words that are fifth declension are really important words, like say res, rei, which means thing. Think how common that word is. And the word dies means day, right? These are fifth declension words, but there just aren't that many fifth declension nouns. So luckily, you have to know the endings because the handful of fifth declension nouns that exist are super common, but luckily the words themselves don't come up, or there aren't many new fifth declension nouns you have to think about. In any event, let's go ahead and finish off with our endings. So again, we know the first two. Ace, ae, ae, again, m, a. Plural, and this is confusing, ace, arum, abus, ace, abus. All right, so that is all of the Latin noun endings. There are some little exceptions to a handful of these that you just have to learn them when they come up. But for the most part, if you are studying these endings when, just in between stuff, when you don't have anything else to work on, this will go a long way in, making the year go nice and easy, or at least, save yourself some headaches down the road. Anyway, scholars, thank you for watching, and I will hopefully see all of you soon.